Last night, a woman came up to me. Okay, it's not a joke. A real woman came up to me and put her arms around me, and with this incredible expression of affection, said, "Thank you." I said, "You're welcome. But why?" She says, "I lost 10 pounds, or 10 kilos, sorry, 10 kilos. And I said, "Congratulations. But why are you thanking me?" And she says, "Because something happened after we met." About 6 months ago, I'm standing outside of a jail, and a lady who had been in and out, so we had a jail program, and I would take people in and then also bring them out. And she asks me, "Do you have a minute?" And I said, "Sure." And she said, "I'd like to say something to you." I said, "Fire away." She said, "You're part of the reason why I'm going to be a mother again." Think about that. You're standing in front of a jail, and somebody tells you that. And I said, "Tell me more. I'm interested." And she says, through the process of having visited some of the inmates and watching the work that was happening there, she had been made aware of a boy, a 5-year-old boy, in the town of Miskolc, whose parents no longer lived, and her grandmother, his grandmother, she was just getting so old that she couldn't simply take care of him. And so she said, while she was sitting in one of those sessions and she saw the life histories of what was transpiring in front of her eyes, she said, "I made the decision then that I've got to do everything I can to ensure that 5-year-old boy doesn't end up here." So what do the two stories have in common? I never thought years ago, when I started down the path of sort of trying to improve myself in the case of public speaking, but the woman who lost 10 kilos went through a similar course, and this is a whole lot more than public speaking. Her whole image about herself, her body, her outlook on life changed. And after she stepped off stage, she made a commitment to herself that she's going to be a different person. And you know, many people they're looking for a way to get started. So you're in a rut, you just can't figure the way out, and the easiest and the most handy, or the closest solution to most of those ruts, is to start taking care of your body physically. So it's easier than going to the library, Googling things. You can do it tomorrow morning. And so she did. And that's what happened also in jail as we work with those people and we saw those inmates. Some of them, we were working with people who'd been in for 15 years. And it was sort of a re-socialization program that we had come up with. These people are coming out. And what happens in that final year before they're released could make lasting impact on how they respond to the real world once they get out. So if you've been locked away for 15 years, there's no question that, we talk about the technology, you've heard the speeches tonight, so much has happened in 15 years. And certainly in this country, they're not as resourceful as they are in some countries. I remember reading about a jail in Brazil. And these inmates were so smart that they actually trained pigeons to fly in parts so they could build cell phones. So the bird would fly in, land on the windowsill, and drop off a part, and one bird after another. And then enough parts were collected there, and they would build cell phones. And I thought, my goodness, I'd actually like to meet an inmate like that and shake their hand. But that's not the kind of inmates we see here. And you can tell the difference when somebody flips that switch on the inside, because the way they hold their body changes. And if you notice, and why I think this is so very important, if somebody he's no longer alive, but if you remember during the first Iraqi war, there was General Schwarzkopf, the American Army general. And if you look at the way a person like that holds their body, their chest is pushed out and they're proud. And if you hold yourself that way without people realizing, they start doing the same thing. And so it's actually incredible how much of an impact we have on one another. So all I need to do is get someone to make a small change over here. They flip the switch. Somebody else sees it. They flip the switch. And then what we start seeing is something like popcorn when it starts popping after a few minutes. A week from tonight, there will be 11 children, I call them children, between the ages of 13 and 19 on a similar stage giving their first English language speech to a crowd over 100 people. And when I've worked with so many of these kids, and Atish has also, when you work with these people in the beginning, you start thinking, did I make a mistake? Is this the biggest mistake I've ever made? And then as they start to get a little closer, and they start to look at each other, and they start to feel safe. We talked about taking risks in the environment. And about the 4th or 5th week into the 12 or 13 sessions, one of the kids pops. And then the following week, 2 kids pop. And as this permission subtly is granted to the other, that go ahead, take that risk, step across this line. They slowly, over 12 weeks, everybody rises together. And so we're starting to see that now after doing this for a couple years, actually a lot longer than that, but in this form, a couple years. We're starting to see that there's now a growing groundswell of people who now have this and want to share it. Because that's, to me, what passion is all about. I mean, I have kids, and I remember when they would draw a picture, for those of you who've had small kids, they'll draw a picture, and then what's the first thing they want to do? They want to show it to you. And it has nothing to do with quality. It just has something to do with pride. And this is mine, and I want you to see it. And if you give the child the right attention at the right moment, then they can start to believe. There was a guy who was a basketball coach in the United States. His name was Jim Valvano. He's no longer alive. Unfortunately, he died at 46 of cancer. But he would always talk that the biggest gift he ever got, and I think someone said it earlier today, was that his father believed in him. And we're not going to be each other's fathers unless something either technologically or biologically happens. Not counting on it. But if we can take whatever that I would have or should have or did get from my father and give it to someone else, magic will happen. And so I am so excited when I come to an event like this because I see the time and effort that all the speakers put into it. And we see in the back what the mistakes, the embarrassment. I know that because I was embarrassed for the first time in my life having to speak in front of 800 people at the age of 17. You don't want to make a mistake at the age of 17 in front of 800 people. I didn't want to make it, but I did. And it's how you react to that mistake, and it certainly didn't happen overnight, but how you react to those mistakes and where you find the support will determine, somebody said earlier, the kind of people you spend your future with or your time with will ultimately determine what kind of future you have. If you spend your time with somebody who's gone through that magic, it'll have an effect on you. And you'll have one of 2 choices. One choice is you run away. That's the easy one, right? Second choice is to allow it to affect you and you do something about it. And that's what we're starting to see. Certainly with the kids, what happens is when in a dinner environment like this, the parents invite friends so they can show off with their kids. They're passionate about their kids. They want everybody to see their kids. And then the neighbor sees her child on stage and says, I want that for my kid. And instead of it coming across arrogant and people bragging and my kid's smarter than your kid is, they feel a sense of pride in being able to get someone started down this path. So we'll talk once this is over, once I'm done. We'll have our dessert and we'll have coffee. And I'd certainly be interested in hearing your opinions. We've seen incredible speeches, incredible human beings with extremely varied backgrounds. I think about there are a couple overlaps. One is there are some people, more than one person from Corinthia, and then there are two people in the group who are both entrepreneurs. But that is the limit of what overlap there is among these people. And yet they found the ability to come together and not look for the differences and why he does this and why she speaks with a funny British accent. Nobody really cares. What they do care is that it's no longer a race where I have to be better than everyone else. They consider it a team project. And I can guarantee if you ask anybody who was on stage today, they will tell you that it is important for me that everyone else do well. And in this competitive world that we're in, where all we care about is my competitor either going bankrupt or losing money, isn't it great that we can take time out and do something where we collectively worry about how the other person does? And maybe we take that charge and we apply it in a different part of life. So I encourage you to think about, is this something that is something you'd be willing to try? And you don't have to do it there. There are a lot of opportunities. We just do this because we're here. We believe you got to be planted, you got to grow where you're planted, and we happen to be here. But I encourage you, as adults, I think one of the big mistakes we make is that we sort of get comfortable and we no longer challenge ourselves. So getting up for all the speakers who were there, ask them. They were nervous before they got up here. And as adults, we normally go out of our way to avoid being nervous. I don't want to do that. But when we say I don't want to do that, at the same time we say I don't want to develop. Because there is no way to go from here to here without being nervous. You ought to see the kids. I was worried in the beginning the mothers would call me and say, "What are you doing? My daughter is ruining her clothes." Because they get on, and you know what girls do, and guys do too. They start stretching their sleeves, right? Because they're nervous. And then over time, somehow magically, the sleeves return to their original shape, and they're no longer nervous. Sitting on the other side of the table today, maybe they were nervous, but I can tell you what, it was different nervous today than it was 4 months ago. And I am so proud of the distance these people have covered. And I encourage every one of you, if you come up here, this is a drug. Because if you feel like you belong up here and you can do it well and you can see the impact you have on other people, this is a drug. But the difference between this drug and some of the others is this is legal. And you can take it with you through the airport security check. You never have to make excuses while you're without your drugs. It is a way for you to create your weather on the inside. So whether you ultimately decide to adopt a child or lose weight, I would strongly recommend that you consider public speaking as your avenue to get there. I hope you enjoyed the evening.